Dad yelled. "Until you apologize to your sister and her kid, you're not welcome here." I just replied, "Understood." By morning I was gone. And so was my name from every shared account. The next day my mom was banging on my door like crazy. I opened it and, without thinking twice, did this. "Hey Reddit, I'm Rachel, 31, single, no kids, and I work full-time as a freelance designer. I've always been the capable one in my family. The one who doesn't ask for help. The one who pays her own way, fixes her own problems, and never complains. For a long time I thought that meant I was respected. Turns out it just meant I was useful and nothing more. It all started when my parents bought this broken-down house up in northern Michigan. They called it their dream home, even though it looked like it had been abandoned mid-renovation in 1998. They were excited, overwhelmed, and completely unprepared for the amount of work it needed. So, of course, they called me. Said they couldn't afford contractors. Said they just needed a little help. Asked if I could come up for a week or so to get things started. I agreed, partly because I felt bad and partly because I thought it might be a good chance to reconnect. My relationship with my family has always been complicated. Especially with my younger sister, Claire. Claire's 28, a single mom and a professional victim. She's the type who starts arguments and then cries when people push back. Our parents eat it up. They always have. She was going to be there too with her 3-year-old son, which should have been my first red flag. I showed up with tools, work clothes, and a trunk full of supplies I paid for out of pocket. Paint, tile, wiring, even some plumbing stuff. I'd cleared my schedule, taken time off, and planned out a whole week of work. Claire showed up with an overnight bag and an attitude. The first few days I barely saw her. She spent most of the time watching Netflix or FaceTiming her friends. I was the one in the attic pulling out insulation. I was the one sanding cabinets, fixing outlets, hauling trash to the dump. Her kid was sweet but all over the place and she barely watched him. He broke things, spilled food, screamed non-stop. Every time I said something, Claire twisted it. She'd sigh loudly or say something snarky, and then run to mom and dad acting like I'd insulted her parenting. By day 5 I'd had enough. But I stuck it out. Partly out of guilt and partly because I'd already sunk money and time into this. The final blow came on day 7. Claire claimed I'd called her son a brat. I hadn't. I said word for word that he needed a nap. That was it. But she stormed off crying like I'd screamed at her. Mom and dad circled her instantly, comforting her while glaring at me like I'd slapped her. Dad told me flat out, "Until you apologize to your sister and her kid, you're not welcome here." I didn't yell. Didn't argue. Just looked at him and said, "Understood." The next morning, before anyone woke up, I packed everything. Left the house key on the counter. But I didn't just walk out. I pulled out of every shared account. The joint Home Depot card I'd co-signed. The renovation fund we were all supposedly contributing to, which I'd put over $3,000 into. I transferred my portion back to my own account. Canceled the auto payments. Wiped myself clean from everything tied to that house. I was back in Ohio by late afternoon. Slept like a rock. But by 9 a.m. the next day my mom was at my door, banging like the place was on fire. No call, no text, just pure rage. When I opened it, she barely said a word before launching into a tirade. I didn't yell back. I didn't defend myself. I just asked, "Did you ever actually care about me? Or just my money?" And that's when things really blew up. The second I said it, "Did you ever actually care about me? Or just my money?" My mom froze. She didn't expect that. She came ready for a fight, but not that kind of question. The kind that cuts deeper than yelling ever could. She didn't answer. Just pushed past me into the apartment, ranting about how I'd overreacted, how I'd embarrassed the family, and how dad had barely slept because of the stress. I just stood there and let her talk. Then she got to the real reason she was there. Apparently they tried to use the shared card at the hardware store that morning, and it was declined. The Home Depot account was shut down. So was the backup debit card they'd been using to buy renovation materials. And when she checked the renovation fund, half of it was gone. My half. I told her calmly that I'd taken back only what was mine. She said that money wasn't meant to be touched yet. I asked why I should keep bankrolling a project I wasn't even welcome at. She got quiet for a second. Then she said, "You should have talked to us first." I reminded her that I tried. For 7 days I tried. I brought the tools, I paid for supplies, I spent more time in their house than I had in my own. And all they ever did was tell me I wasn't doing it right or not fast enough, or not with enough grace for Claire's fragile feelings. That's when she started to cry. Said I was tearing the family apart. I almost laughed. I told her the family was already torn. I just stopped pretending everything was fine. I wasn't going to apologize to Claire. I wasn't going to let them gaslight me anymore. And if they needed money that badly, maybe they should ask the daughter they love so much. She left not long after that, slamming the door behind her. I thought that might be the end of it. It wasn't. An hour later, Claire posted this long dramatic story on Facebook about how I'd abandoned our parents during the biggest project of their lives. She made it sound like I left them broke, stranded, and broken-hearted, all because I couldn't handle being around a child. He tagged me in it. And that's when the calls started. Cousins, old family friends, even a couple of aunts. Some of them were neutral. Others weren't. I heard everything from "Why are you being so cold?" to "You should be ashamed." Most of them clearly hadn't heard the real story. So I told it. Publicly. I posted screenshots of bank transfers, receipts for supplies I paid for, and a timeline of everything I did during those 8 days, down to the hour. I didn't attack anyone. Just laid out the facts. It spread fast. By the end of the day, the tone shifted. People started messaging me privately, not to accuse but to apologize. Said they'd had similar experiences. Said they were proud of me for finally standing up to the family dynamic no one talks about. Even a few aunts reached out. One of them, Aunt Laura, said something I'll never forget. "We always knew they leaned on you too hard. We just didn't know how bad it was." That night, I sat on my couch with my phone buzzing nonstop and realized something I should have figured out years ago. They never wanted me there to help. They just wanted me to pay for the things they couldn't do on their own. And now that the money was gone, so was their patience. But so was mine. 2 days after everything went public, the group chats got quiet. No more texts from my parents. No more Facebook shade from Claire. Nothing. It felt like the calm after a storm, but not in a good way. More like that eerie silence before another wave hits. And sure enough, it hit. My dad called me late Thursday night. No text beforehand, just a missed call, then another, then another. I finally picked up, thinking maybe he was going to be civil. He wasn't. He started lecturing me about respect and family loyalty. Said I had humiliated them by involving the extended family and making private matters public. He talked about pride, honor, and how hard things have been lately, but never once admitted they'd done anything wrong. Then he asked me to fix it. To post a follow-up saying I misunderstood. That I'd let stress get to me. That I took things too far and wanted to apologize, especially to Claire. I waited. Asked if Claire had apologized for lying on social media. Or if Mom had told him what she said to me at my door. He didn't answer that. But then he said something that made everything click. He said, "We can't afford to keep this up, Rachel. We're already behind on the siding and the electrician needs another deposit." There was not concern for me. Not regret. Just money. I asked flat out if they'd ever planned to pay me back for the supplies and work I'd already done. He said we were going to, but things have changed. I asked how much money they had actually put into the renovation fund. There was a long silence. Then he admitted it. Most of it had been me. They had only added a few hundred here and there. Everything else. Why? So I asked him why they ever made it sound like it was a shared thing. Why they let me believe I was helping our family, when really I was just keeping their project afloat. He didn't even try to deny it. Just said, "It's your family too. Sometimes we have to sacrifice." I told him I had sacrificed enough. I had sacrificed years of being the responsible one, the fix-it girl, the one who kept her mouth shut to keep the peace. And for what? So Claire could play victim and they could treat me like a live-in contractor with a checkbook? I said no. No to the fake apology. No to the cleanup. No to the money. And that's when he finally got mad. He said, "If you walk away now, don't expect us to come running when things get hard for you." I just said, "I won't." I never did. I hung up. That was the last time I spoke to either of my parents directly. What followed was predictable, guilt emails from Mom, passive-aggressive texts from Claire, and a group message from one of my cousins saying the family was worried about me. But I didn't answer any of it. Instead, I booked my first therapy appointment the next day. Because it was starting to hit me, this wasn't just about the house, or the money, or even Claire. This was about years of being seen as nothing more than what I could provide. And now that I'd stopped providing, they didn't know what to do with me. A week after I cut contact, things were still quiet. Too quiet. No more voicemails. No more guilt bombs. Nothing from Claire. Nothing from Mom. It should have felt peaceful, but it didn't. Then, on a random Tuesday morning, I got a Venmo notification. Claire had requested $4,300. The note said, "Your share of the damage." I stared at it for a full minute, trying to figure out what exactly she thought I'd damaged. She didn't specify. Just sent it like she was billing me for emotional inconvenience. That's when I realized they were unraveling. Claire probably thought this was a power move, but to me it screamed desperation. And then it got weirder. 2 days later, my landlord called. He said someone had been parked outside my building for the last 2 nights. Same car. Same spot. Not causing trouble, just sitting there. At first, I thought it might be a coincidence. But then I remembered something from months back. Dad had once joked that if I ever went off the rails, he'd come find me before things got out of hand. I checked the building cameras the next day. Sure enough, it was my dad's car. He was watching me. I didn't confront him. I didn't call. I just documented it. Took screenshots, saved everything. My therapist, yeah, I'd already had 2 sessions by then, told me not to escalate. Just observe. Set boundaries. Stick to them. But the biggest surprise came from the bank. One afternoon I got a flagged notification on one of my older accounts, the one I hadn't used in a while. It was the same account my parents had temporary access to back when I helped them refinance a few things years ago. I thought I had locked it down. Turns out I hadn't fully removed their linked devices. Someone had tried to access it. I changed everything. 2-factor authentication. New passwords. New bank. I called and had them investigate. They couldn't confirm who it was, but the login attempt came from their area. And that's when it clicked, they never really needed me. They needed access. They needed my access. To credit. To funds. To knowledge. To the kind of responsibility they never developed for themselves because someone, me, had always picked up the slack. And now that I was done being useful, they were trying to find workarounds. Through guilt. Through manipulation. Through back doors I forgot to close. I felt sick. But I also felt awake. The next day I did something that surprised even me. I reached out to my uncle, Mom's younger brother. We hadn't talked in years, mostly because he lived out west and wasn't involved in family drama. I told him everything. He didn't even hesitate. Said, "Rachel, they've been using you since you were in college." And then he told me something I didn't know. Back when Claire got pregnant, our parents were nearly bankrupt. They were trying to sell the old house. They borrowed money, not just from me but from a few family members. But I was the only one they ever expected to keep giving. Everyone else they pushed away. Me. They kept close. Because I never said no. He'll know. I hung up that call and just sat in silence. Because deep down I'd always suspected they didn't see me as a daughter. Just a resource. But hearing it confirmed, that did something to me. I wasn't just going to cut them off. I was going to make sure they never got the chance to use me again. After that call with my uncle, everything came into focus. All the pieces clicked. The guilt trips, the fake emergencies, the way they twisted my generosity into duty. It wasn't just about this house or Claire's drama or even the money. It was about control. And I was done. The next family gathering was my cousin's engagement party. First big event since everything blew up. I wasn't planning on going. But then Aunt Laura called and said, "You should come. You've got nothing to hide." So I did. I walked in not knowing what to expect. Half the family gave me long looks. A few avoided eye contact. But then one by one people started coming up to me. Quietly. Some hugged me. Some just nodded. One of my older cousins actually said, "We were wondering when someone would finally stand up to them." And then I saw them, Mom, Dad, and Claire, across the room. They looked uncomfortable. Claire had that tight fake smile plastered on. Dad wouldn't even make eye contact. Mom gave me a half-hearted wave like nothing had happened. I didn't go over. But later, during dinner, I ended up sitting at a table near enough to overhear Claire whispering to an aunt about how I'd cut the whole family off over a little misunderstanding. She called me cold, said I was spiteful, and even brought up the Venmo thing like I owed her for her trauma. So I stood up. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't make a scene. I just said in front of the entire table, "Claire, you made up a story about me on Facebook. Dad told me I wasn't welcome in the house unless I apologized for something I didn't do. And Mom showed up at my apartment demanding money. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a pattern." She froze. Everyone else at the table went dead silent. Kept going. I helped them because I wanted to. But when help became expectation and expectation became entitlement, I walked. And I'm not sorry. It was the first time I'd ever said something like that publicly. I expected a blow-up. But no one argued. Not even Claire. In fact, she got up and left the table. A few minutes later, Mom and Dad quietly slipped out of the party. I didn't follow them. Instead, I stayed and talked with relatives I hadn't seen in years. It turned out some of them had been pushed away too, in smaller ways but enough that they got it. That night, I exchanged numbers with 2 cousins and made loose plans for a trip out west to visit my uncle. And something strange happened in the days that followed. My phone stopped blowing up. No more Claire. No more messages from my parents. No more Venmo requests. It was like after that night they realized they'd lost their grip on me. That the performance wasn't working anymore. And the truth was I wasn't trying to hurt them. I just couldn't survive in a family where love was measured in dollars, and my worth depended on how much I could give. So I walked. And this time no one followed. This is the first update and probably the last one. Months passed. The silence held. No calls. No emails. No messages from Mom, Dad, or Claire. At first it was unsettling. That kind of quiet makes you think something's coming. But nothing did. I stayed still. I focused on healing. I kept going to therapy. I worked, started running again, and finally took that solo trip to Arizona I'd been putting off for years. I was starting to feel like myself. Not the version they needed me to be, but who I actually was when no one was pulling on me from all sides. Then one afternoon Aunt Laura texted, "Call me when you're free. Thought you'd want to know something." I called her immediately. She told me things had shifted. Fast. Claire lost her job. Apparently she'd been borrowing company funds to cover house expenses while telling everyone the money came from a savings account. My parents tried to cover it up, but they couldn't. Word got out. And without me there, they didn't have a safety net. Their renovations stalled. The siding never got finished. The kitchen was still half-gutted. The permits expired. They started arguing, loudly enough that neighbors complained. A couple of extended relatives offered to help, but only with boundaries. Real ones. And as soon as those came into play, my parents pulled away. Like they couldn't function without someone giving them everything, no questions asked. But I didn't feel joy hearing all that. Just clarity. They never wanted partnership. They wanted obedience. That same week I got an invitation from my uncle out west. A small family gathering. Casual, no pressure. I said yes. When I arrived, it felt like stepping into a completely different version of family. There was laughter, but none of it forced. Conversations didn't feel like traps. No one expected anything from me. They were just happy I was there. We cooked. We hiked. We drank wine on the porch and shared stories. Some about the past. Some about things we'd avoided saying for years. And one night, as we sat under the stars, my uncle said something that stuck with me. "You were never the problem. You were just the one they couldn't control." It hit me in the best possible way. Since then, I've kept close with that side of the family. We've started planning a trip to Oregon next spring. I've even thought about moving, not to run away but to start clean. To build something on my own terms for once. As for my parents and Claire, I still haven't heard from them. Not a word. And I've realized something important. They don't have access to me anymore. Not emotionally, not financially, not even digitally. I closed every door they used to keep open. And in doing so I found new ones. Better ones. Real ones. I didn't lose a family. I just finally figured out who actually deserved to be part of it. Deserved to be part of it. Deserved to be part of it.